Hello, this is Simon from Small Animations, and today I'm going to show you how to use Lightwave and After Effects together to add UI elements and text callouts to your renders. So this is a project I worked on recently for serious readers reading lamps, where they wanted text callouts, UI graphics and so on. And so after taking my animation in Lightwave, I exported null data and cameras so I could start adding text in 3D and really add that polish to the render. So today I'm just going to show you a few bits and pieces on how I put things together. So first off, I've just got my raw render from, this is rendered in Lightwave using Octane. And so this is my raw render. There's nothing in here apart from the image sequence at the minute. So here we can see we've got this render head comp, we've got a composition set at 30 frames a second. If I come in here to the footage, we've got just making sure that's 30 frames a second as well. We head over to Lightwave, coming in our preferences here, general options, we've got 30 frames a second there. So here's my basic animation. So what I want to do is I'm going to get my camera data and a few of these controls over to After Effects just so we can start using them to parent our text and things like that. So the first thing to do is sort out the scale, because when you export data from Lightwave, it comes into After Effects very small. So I'm just going to scale things up in here. So the way I'm doing that is create a null, Control N, let's call that master, and making sure we've got parent in place selected there. We're just going to parent everything to the master. So I'm just going to drag that in there. Okay. So now with the master, I'm just going to scale that up by, let's just go 10. Okay, and now we've just got that larger scene. It will work better with After Effects. So first off, what I'm going to do is just select my camera, come to the IO tab and send to After Effects. Okay, that doesn't look like it's done much at the moment, so what we'll do is just come to layout again. I'm going to select this null here, which is kind of what I use to rotate the main head there. And I'm just going to send that to After Effects as well. Okay, so now when we scrub through, we can see that matches exactly with our render, and we can start parenting to that. So what I want to do first is just to create a background here, just so that we haven't got this plain black. So what I'm doing here is I've just got an HDR image. This is an interior of a car, and we want to kind of map that to the camera so that as the camera moves and rotates, we get some kind of nice movement in the background. So what I'm going to do first off is create a new solid. That's Control Y, and we'll just call that BG. And then in the effects and presets, I'm just going to search for environment. And if we double click that, we've got CC environment there. So here, this is referencing itself here. You can see it's trying to add the BG layer. What we want is the car there. So you can see as that camera is rotating, that all matches, which is kind of cool. So we can play with the zoom in here, so we can kind of get more of that in if we want to. So let's start adding some effects on here. I'm just going to add a blur first off. Repeat edge pixels. I'm just going to blur this out, something like that, and then let's get some, I can zoom right in, and we can also pan it around so we can kind of just get some colours that work. So now we've got kind of a blurry background. We can play with that and add as many effects or tints or whatever, but it's just a nice easy way of kind of having some movement in there. See, as this camera tilts now, you get that kind of proper 3D effect. Okay, so now what we want to do is start adding some text elements. So what I'll do first off is select my text tool, and I'm just going to start typing. So let's call this label. Set our scales correctly. Okay, we've got our label here. I'm just going to make sure that our anchor point is in a correct position. You hold control, that will snap. So I'm moving this around, hold control, and that will snap to the center. So we've got a nice centered pivot on that. So first off, what I'm going to do is just make that a 3D layer, and it will disappear because it's flown off somewhere into space. Can't even see it right now. So let's just try pressing P for position, properties, and zero that out. And you can see that that's now just popped into existence. So now we can sort of scale this. Let's make that about 20%. Okay, so if I press Control Shift and H, I can hide my controls there. You can see that's working with the camera now. But what we want to do, we want to parent that to the animation. So I'm just going to come to my pick whip and select the null that we brought in, and now that will just move with our animation, which is kind of cool. So let's get our controls back. So often you see like a line connecting the elements that you want. So I'm just going to do a bit of a cheat here, and I'm just going to select my text, create a new line, and I'm going to type the letter L. Guess it depends on the font you're using here, but what I'm going to do is just start scaling this up, and we've got a nice kind of connecting line there. So now if we let's just make sure we have our controls. I'm just going to change my anchor point now. And just a bit at the base of that. So now if I need to rotate it, it will rotate from the point on the line there. Okay, so let's just move that into a position where we want it. Now I have our label. Okay, so we may want to sort of make this face the camera just so that we can kind of keep that text the right way up. So the way we do that is just select that, right click, come to transform, and we've got auto orient here at the bottom. I'm just going to make that orient towards the camera, and now that stays in place. And because we've got that pivot point at the bottom of that, it looks like it's actually stuck to the render there. Okay, so now let's have a look at making this disappear as it comes behind the object there, because obviously that doesn't work as it is right there. So what we're going to do, we're going to use some of these track mats here. So I'm going to take my render head and I'm just going to duplicate that and put that above the label text, and I'm going to set the track mat to be, let's try alpha mat first. Well, you can see that's disappeared, so we need alpha mat inverted. So you can see that's now constantly behind. But what we can do is, if we come to the transparency or opacity of this, we can say at this point we want it at 0%. So that's now brought it into the front. And then we'll wait for it to find that first frame where it starts to go behind. So we'll come to one frame before that and we'll create a keyframe at 0. One frame along, and now we'll put that at 100%. So now for the next few frames there, you'll see it's behind, and now we can keyframe again, knock it on one frame, bring that down to 0, and now we're back in front. Well, we actually wanted to stay behind now at that point, because so we can delete these keyframes. So that comes through and disappears there, so we'll make that disappear as it goes behind. Let's just watch that through. So we've got that nicely tagged to the geometry there, goes around behind. So it's just a nice quick way, rather than creating special masks and things. We've already got the kind of data we need to make that disappear. So let's add some UI to this. So we want some kind of rotating kind of UI elements or something. So I created, you see up here we've got a preview. I created a couple of sort of UI elements. So I'm just going to create a new composition and we'll call this UI. Just 1080 by 1080 is fine. And I'm just going to drag these into position here. So let's just scale some of these down a bit. Something like that. We can play with some opacities just to make it. Get this one, and we'll just scale that down a tad, and just reduce the opacity a touch. Okay, so we've got this, and we want to add some animation to this, but we're not going to bother with keyframing and so on. So if we come up here to our panels window, effects and presets, we've got animation presets in here, and if we come to behaviors, we've got wiggle here. So if we just select all of these actually, and we can just double click on there, and you can see that starts to animate randomly, which is kind of cool. So we can offset these, we can select each one, we can come and change the speed, you know, make that really fast, whatever you want to do. So that's just a really neat way of getting some random animation. Okay, so we've got that, and now let's add that to our scene. So we come to our project and we've got our UI comp. Just going to drop that in the scene there. You can see that's just animating nicely there. So What would be nice is if I could attach some of these to this beam here. So what I'm going to do is let's make that 3D again. P for position, and zero that out. You can see that's huge, so scale this down about 10%, and let's get our controls back. Control Shift and H. I'm just going to place that. I'm going to eyeball that. You could bring a null in for the position of the exact center here, but I'm just doing this just by eye. And we'll do 90 degrees in Y, and then we'll just push this out. Okay, so we'll have them sort of scaling from, let's try 8%, and then I'll make another one and duplicate that, move it out, and we'll make this, let's try 12%, maybe 10. I'll just move that out a tad, and then make a third one. And we'll scale that up to something like that. Okay, so they're just hovering in space at the minute. So what we want to do is we will parent those to the ball joint to get them to move with the head. Let's turn the controls off. You can see there we've got some nice little animation. But again, we want to mask these as we did the text, but as there's 3 layers, it'd be nice just to not have to do that 3 times. So what I want to do is pre-comp these. If I pre-comp these, they're going to lose all their 3D information, so they're going to need a camera and they're going to need this null in their own comp. So I'm just going to duplicate these, and what we'll do then is come to frame 0, we'll just take these UI elements and we're going to parent that to our new swivel joint there. So then when I pre-compose, right click, pre-compose, we'll just call that rings. You can see now everything kind of works together. And it just helps to keep things clean in your main comp as well. And we can come in here and we could perhaps, let's just get that to the end of the comp there. We could, you know, offset these just so everything's not rotating at the same rate. Something like that, and then when you play this, you can see they're slightly different. Okay, so let's just, one last thing, I'm just going to make these sort of fade off. So 50% of transparency for that one, and let's go 25 for that. Let's just close these so we don't get confused. Okay, so now got our UI elements there. So again, I'm just going to duplicate my render head again, bring that on top of the rings, and what did we say, alpha inverted for the track map. So again, we want that to be opacity 0 for it to be in front. Let that move all the way around, come to the frame before it crosses over, keyframe, one frame along. That's just the page up and page down to shift it one frame. It's 100%. Wait for that to come round, and we'll keyframe and then bring it to the front by making that 0. And then at this point, again, another keyframe, knock it on 1, and then we're back at 100. You can see that's behind there now. Nice and easy. Okay, obviously we can start adding some glows and stuff to this. Again, it's the beauty of having it as one comp. You don't have to have 3 sets of effects, or if you want to change them, you don't have to do it 3 times. So I'm just going to here just add a red giant glow. You can add the native stuff, but I just really like this optical glow of red giant. Let's generate a UV, and we can start colorizing. Just make something sort of orange. Something like that looks kind of cool. And we'll just set this to be linear dodge. There we go. So what if we wanted a UI element to actually wrap around this pole here, or this upright? So let's give that a go. So now we've got our UI, I'm just going to use that again. So I'm going to drop that in the scene, and I'm going to make that 3D, and then 0 out the positions. Scale that down to about 10%. Let's try 12. 15, I think. There we go. So now in rotation, I'm just going to do my X rotation at -90. Let's just scale that up slightly. Okay, and we'll bring it up as well. Okay. Okay, so that works in 3D, that's great, but obviously we need to mask out these areas so it looks like it's wrapping around. So again, we're going to take our render heads, render, and drag it above our UI. And we are going to come to alpha matte, inverted again. Okay, but what we can do this time is we can actually just draw a mask on. So if we come to about here, we'll just get our pen tool. We can, now we need to be on render head, that's correct. We can just paint a mask. And there we go, you see that's popped in front there. So now we just need to make a few keyframes so that this handle piece doesn't ruin the illusion. So we'll come to this point here, and under the mask options, mask path, we'll just create a keyframe and just now follow this. Let's create the move tool. Let's drag to select. I'm just going to keyframe some of this. Just keyframe there. Don't have to be too careful, it's just kind of rough just to capture those shapes. And that's it. So let's have a look what we've got. I've just noticed an error here. Let's have a look. So we just need to keyframe this mask. You see here as it zooms in, we start to lose it around this area. So let's just keyframe there. Keep things nice and tidy. So keyframe this. And where do we start to lose it? Just there. So we're just going to key these down. And again. There we go. So that's hopefully given you a few ideas and tips and tricks and things, getting your animation out of Lightwave into After Effects and adding UI and text elements to polish your renders. Have fun with it.